After Friday's earthquake, everyone asked, did you feel it? After today's eclipse, everyone asked, did you see it? And if you missed the eclipse, don't worry, there are currently 2 billion videos of it on Instagram, so.
Yes. A lot of people, I think they may have all been Democrats, cried when the eclipse happened in the sky. People cried. Did you see that? A lot of crying. It's on the front page of the Washington Post. You know, they're not writing about MAGA Republicans crying at an eclipse. It's an eclipse, which is caused by climate change. Climate change is good, and that's because you drive combustion engine automobiles. It's terrible out there. The View, they have this TV show, The View. The View is actually under the umbrella of ABC News. The people there are paid by ABC News. It's an ABC News show. Whoopi and Joy. See, Whoopi and Joy and Happy. Sunny. And Sunny. Whoopi and Joy and Sunny. And they're the most miserable people you're ever going to meet. They should have a Happy too, don't you? There's some people are named Happy. Happy Rockefeller. They could have Happy and Sunny and Whoopi and Joy, and they're all the most miserable people. They sitting there yesterday. They were all pulling their own teeth out with pliers. It was kind of weird. Wasn't that a strange segment? Don't you think? Kind of strange. All right, they weren't really doing that, but they were complaining. It was Joyless who was saying, well, you know, we got this climate change. And I didn't even talk about this yesterday, but I meant to. You know, we had on Friday the earthquake, and it was a 4.8 earthquake on the Richter scale. You know, Dr. Richter and his scale. 4.8 on the Richter scale was the earthquake. And then, just 3 days later, on the date 4/8, we have the eclipse. Coincidence? Don't even tell Joy Behar about this, because she might have a mental breakdown. She might have to go back to the institution. See, because you got 4/8 Richter scale, then 4/8, it's the date. You got the earthquake, and then you have, the eclipse, which I think was scheduled in advance. Wasn't the eclipse scheduled in advance? Because the patriarchy knew that it was coming. The patriarchy. Democrats didn't, but the patriarchy knew it was coming. We told them, we members of the patriarch, we told them when it would be coming and where, the best place to stand was and how long it would last and all the details available to you thanks to the patriarchy. But the Democrats were too busy throwing children into volcanoes in the hopes of having better crop yields next year. Democrat Party stuff. So I've got your little bit of The View, because they're convinced. And then I was doing a little research on this, but I found some remarkable news and information because, the Democrats, they keep generating new stuff, new propaganda. Speaking of which, AOC was on the Stephen Colbert show last night, and she was spreading propaganda like so much fertilizer, and so is he. Stephen Colbert, they pay him, $10 million a year to do Democrat Party propaganda and be a meathead. And I've got a bit of that for you. And then they attacked Congressman James Comer. And I have for you James Comer responding to these idiotic propagandistic attacks from the Stephen Colbert show last night on the CBS channel. But back to the climate, and because it's causing, you got 4/8 Richter scale, 4/8 the date, you got an earthquake, then you have a long scheduled eclipse. And the Democrats, they're producing people that are so dumb. How dumb are they? That these are people that make millions of dollars a year paid by ABC News, and they come out and with a straight face, although they probably can't use the term straight face, can they? Because that's bigoted or something like that. And they, with a straight face, they say, oh yeah, climate change, sure. Then we have an earthquake, climate change. Then we have an eclipse. Can't say they're not all related. 4/8 and 4/8. Come on. But while I was looking this up this morning, and Michael Piercy and I were trading stuff back and forth on this, and I went to do a little search on the search machine, invented by Al Gore, peace be upon him. And I went to look for climate change disasters because I know how crazy all these people are, and they're pretty crazy. Here's the headline from the Journal of Climate Change and Health. It's the Journal of Climate Change and Health from Science Direct. This is science. You can't question it. It's science. Climate change-related disasters and health of LGBTQ plus populations. That's the headline. This is a study. It's scientific stuff. Now, here's what let me jump to the most important part here in this very important study from the Journal of Climate Change and Health. It's remarkable stuff. Like other marginalized groups, it's a marginalized group, like other marginalized groups, and they're all the same. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people, and then they put in parentheses LGBTQ plus. They didn't have the plus in the thing here, just lesbian and gay. Aren't lesbian people gay? Aren't those like the same thing, not two different things? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people will be, on average, they will have more exposure to climate-related disasters. Wait a minute, how can bisexual people have more exposure to climate-related disasters, you might want to know? It also says they will be more susceptible to the adverse impacts of climate change-related disasters and have fewer resources to recover from climate harms. Fewer resources to recover from. Now, so wait a minute, isn't that like, aren't most gay people like dinks, dual income, no kids? And that's the most affluent category of people, I think, in the world, isn't it? Dual income, no kids, don't have all these expensive, save for college and, shoes for little Timmy and book bags and all that. Don't have a lot of that. But like other marginalized groups, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people will, on average, have more exposure to climate-related disasters, be more susceptible to the adverse impacts of climate change-related disasters, and have fewer resources to recover from climate harms. Everything is tough for everybody except me, I think, and you, Michael, right? I mean, honestly, let me just say it is great to be a straight white male and be a member of the patriarchy because, for one thing, let me just name one of the things that's really great. No climate change disasters for us. There are no climate change disasters for us because of our, inherent advantage, the white privilege of not having any climate change disasters affecting us. That's good. In fact, Michael, I don't know about you, but where I was, there was no eclipse yesterday because for white people, for straight white males, the sun never goes away. The sun is always out. In fact, it's getting a little annoying when I get up at midnight at 2 a.m. and the sun is still out my window. It's downright weird. I've thought about, declaring myself to be transgender and see if the climate changes for me, just to see how that works out. But there it is. That's the Journal of Climate and Health, the climate change-related disasters and the health of LGBTQ plus populations. And why is it that LGBTQ plus populations have more exposure to climate disasters? You might want to know. And the scientific answer to that is they don't. That's completely ridiculous. It's just another ridiculous lie by another ridiculous outfit run by ridiculous left-wing lunatics who want nothing more than to be victims of something. It doesn't matter what it is. So if you're a white male, you can always declare yourself to be bisexual or transgender for that matter, and then you will fall into a victim category. You will be a member of a marginalized group and, stay away from the ocean because tsunamis and things might affect you in ways that they don't affect me. It is pretty great, I got to say, to be me. And I know that everyone, even remotely like me, feels exactly the same way. Quite the privilege. Yes, it is. Speaking of lies, the Washington Examiner yesterday, great piece by Mark Morgan and Sean Kennedy. Bad data from the FBI mislead about crime. What's all this? That's right, the fourth quarter 2023 crime report from the FBI, the federal government's keeper of crime data, is unreliable at best and deceptive at worst. I've talked about this many times in the ways that they manipulate the data and the statistics. You know, lies, damn lies, and statistics. It's come up on my Newsmax show a number of times as well. And, you know, crime, Democrats committing crimes peaked out, really spiked in 2021, 2022. And then a slight dip in 2023 because they killed so many people that, you know, there aren't as many murderers roaming the streets anymore. And so there's a little bit less crime, but it's just a little dip. And they say, hey, look at this. Isn't this great? The crime is down in 2023. Don't you think that's great? And it's like, well, it's still up compared to 2019. And I've talked about this in New York City. The Democrats pull the same statistical lie trick. And they say, oh, look, crime is down in the first quarter of 2023. But that's only because it was like a 25-year high in 2022. If you compare it to 2019, 2023 is still much higher in most respects. But it turns out that the FBI is misleading us with slippery stats, and they decided to change the way, just kind of randomly, change the way that law enforcement agencies across the country report crime. And that way, the new statistics don't marry up very well with the old statistics. So you're comparing, apples to pomegranates instead of apples to apples. And that's one sinister, corrupt, filthy way that sleazy bureaucrats use to manipulate numbers and, by extension, public opinion on matters of crime, which they're assuring us crime is getting better. It's getting so much better. Crime isn't as bad as it used to be. And, first of all, hey, Democrats, stop shooting people. How about that? Maybe we can come to an agreement. You guys could stop shooting so many people. That'd be really good. Then crime would be down. And stop raising criminals with no conscience and no sense of humanity. That'd be nice. But that seems like that's more of a long-term approach rather than an immediate approach. Also, Washington, D.C., we've got a left-wing radical mayor, and they've been driving crime up. Last year, we had a 26-year high in homicides, and that's murders. And the Democrats committed every single murder in the city except for one. I just made that stat up, but I know if that there had been a MAGA hat-wearing Republican that had murdered somebody, that'd be big news for a long time. And that didn't happen. So I'm pretty sure that the stats have a lot to do with Democrats and all that. Also, we had a record number of not just a 26-year high in homicides last year. No, everything's getting better. Crime is down. Compared to what exactly? And we had more carjackings last year. What was it, 959 carjackings last year? We're only 61 square miles of dirt. And 959 carjackings, every one of them perpetrated by Democrats. But D.C., they're excited to announce in the Washington Post today in cahoots with the Democrats that are ruining everything. The headline is, D.C. opens Center for Real-Time Crime Monitoring. And here's their solution. They're going to add 600 surveillance cameras around the city. And that won't actually stop crime. That's not how you stop crime. You might see who's committing the crime, but, it's your sons and your daughters, by the way, that are committing all the crimes. The problem, you see, is not our guns, it's your sons. But the big solution is we're going to add hundreds of surveillance cameras to turn, always in the name of public safety. Take away your rights, take away your privacy, always in the name of making things better, because this is how authoritarianism works. They sell it to the public as a good thing. It's going to be a real good thing. But I want to get to the story by Mark Morgan and Sean Kennedy on the FBI corrupting our crime stats, because the Democrats want it that way, so they can run on crime being down when crime is actually up. They're happy to lie to us. That's not a problem for them. Gallup, the Gallup polling people. Gallup finds that Americans' trust in Biden down sharply, as Trump now viewed as having better judgment. That Joe Biden might get into a tub and open a vein like Frankie Five Angels to that news. The Robert Hur interview. The Congress has not only requested but demanded the audio recordings of the interview with Hunter Biden. We have the transcript, and now the Congress wants the audio recordings, and the Department of Justice is corrupt, so they're refusing to hand it over to Congress. Congress has a right to that. We have a right to it. We're the public. We own that audio tape. Hand it over, corrupt filthies. You bunch of filthies at the Department of Justice. And did you see this woman from it's an ABC show, Blackish. And she thinks Trump is Hitler because, of his mustache or something like that. They're completely crazy. Got a lot of crazy people. And The View, that's ABC News. I got LGBTQ news out of the NAIA and the NCAA because I love abbreviations here on the Chris Plante Show. Soft on crime leads to more crime. That's New York. And we got a radical Islamic jihadi terrorist arrested by the FBI in Idaho. I want to share that news with you. It won't be reported by the news media because they're wannabe jihadis in the news media, and that's coming up. We're at 888-630-9625.
Hey, it's Chris Plante, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlanteCruise.com.
I'm not sure which one is more climate related, the earthquake or the eclipse. But I do know that I'm in a panic about the climate because of these two events. Very scary. And, people, Democrats out there crying. And the front page of the Washington Post, they're talking about, screams tears as Eclipse stuns. Tears. Democrats are just on the edge, I think. They're teetering on the brink. They don't have any place left to go, like Zach Mayo, and Officer and a Gentleman. You got no place left to go. And speaking of Democrats that have no place left to go, pretty crazy story. FBI arrests Alexander Scott Mercurio, accused of pledging allegiance to ISIS. The Islamic State, that's an Islamist group. It's a radical Islamic jihadi terrorist group, one of a great many of those. Planned attacks on churches in Idaho. And in fact, what the headline says is, because they come from the Department of Redundancy Department, it says, FBI arrests Alexander Scott Mercurio, accused of pledging allegiance to ISIS. Planned attacks on churches in Idaho. Churches. That's what the actual headline says. Churches in churches? Yeah, it does. Also, his parents named him Alexander Scott Mercurio. I know why they named him Alexander Scott Mercurio, and I got the jihadi coming up. Now, the Democrat Party is pro-Hamas and anti-Israel. The Democrat Party is the party of anti-Semites. The Democrat Party is the party of every racist crime in the history of the United States of America, pretty much. Maybe a rare exception here and there, but they own pretty much all of it. And we know, because I talk about it from time to time, and almost nobody else does, that the Democrats have taken up suicide attacks. Suicide attacks are a part of the Democrat Party's thing now. We had the transgender suicide attack on a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, right? We had mass attacks by transgender people in Colorado Springs, mass murder, suicide. Now, that person survived the one in Colorado Springs at Club Q because big, strong man tackled the killer and beat him up. It was an Army officer that beat him up. But never mind that. We had suicide attacks. Let's just do the self-immolations, because a Democrat went to the Israeli embassy not far from this radio station and self-immolated a matter of weeks ago. Doused himself in flammable liquid, set himself on fire because he wanted to protest against Israel and in favor of the radical Islamic jihadi death cult Hamas, right? And that brought to mind the Democrat that self-immolated and killed himself. Now, these at least were not murderous suicide attacks, but they were suicide protests, right? That's what they call them. And another Democrat self-immolated, doused himself in gasoline on the steps, the plaza in front of the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, just across from the Capitol. Set himself on fire for Earth Day, And I think that was 2 Earth Days ago now. And he died. It took about 3 days. Terrible, horrible thing. Guy came in from Colorado to self-immolate, right? Then we had a suicide attack on the U.S. Capitol Police by a black nationalist lunatic at the Capitol. Man crashed his car into 2 police officers, murdering one, severely wounding another. He murdered Officer William Evans. Billy Evans was the U.S. Capitol Police officer. Then the Democrat black nationalist jumped out of the car with a giant knife he had just bought at a nearby market and attacked the police, who were forced to shoot and kill him. That was a suicide attack on police, a murderous suicide attack, anti-police murderous suicide attack. Same thing happened in New York City with the murders of officers Ramos and Liu by a Democrat out of Maryland that drove up there to murder police officers in New York, and then he killed himself at a nearby subway stop with a gun to the head. And then there was the suicide attack on police officers at the Black Lives Matter rally in Dallas, Texas. I think 9 police were killed by this psychotic, and the police had to use a bomb to blow him up and kill him in a parking garage. Suicide attack on police. And these are all Democrat Party suicide attacks, all right? We talk about radical Islam, and rightly so, a lot, but the Democrat Party has become something other than what the Democrat Party used to be. Suicide attack in Baton Rouge and by the way, Dallas was that massacre, police massacre, mass murder was a black nationalist also. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, mass murder of police officers there by another suicidal Democrat anti-cop lunatic, right? So I just want to put that all in context because, suicide attacks belong to radical Islam and, Japanese imperialist kamikaze pilots and to the Democrat Party because the Democrat Party has gone around the bend in so many different ways. Now, here again is the headline: FBI arrests Alexander Scott Mercurio, accused of pledging allegiance to ISIS, planned attacks on churches in Idaho, and was planning on murdering lots of innocent people at churches. Now, that means he's not a good Christian, I think, to just offer one supposition there. And he's a Democrat in Idaho. What's he doing there? Also, I mentioned his name is Alexander Scott Mercurio. And Alexander Scott, I said I know why he's named Alexander Scott, why his parents named him Alexander Scott. And I could be wrong, but then again, I might not be. Alexander Scott Mercurio, in the TV show, kind of a minor classic, I Spy, 1960s TV show, Robert Culp, and Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby played secret agents working for the United States government, kind of defense intelligence agency agents working for them. They're secret agents, and they're flying around the world. And Robert Culp pretends to be, they're undercover, pretends to be a professional tennis player, right? And Bill Cosby is his personal trainer, right? But the character in the TV show I Spy, played by Bill Cosby, is Alexander Scott. Alexander Scott. Bill Cosby, real cool character. Alexander Scott, but they call him Scotty. They call him Scotty. They don't call him Alex. They call him Scotty for Alexander Scott. So these people named their kid Alexander Scott Mercurio. And they thought he'd grow up to be a regular American, but apparently the Democrats got their teeth into him. So now the FBI has arrested Alexander Scott Mercurio. And it looks like he's going to go to jail for a long time because he was planning on murdering lots of people at multiple churches in Idaho with all kinds of tools. Now, Mercurio shared that he had not been doing well, and he had not been fasting during Ramadan. See, he fancies himself a Muslim man, which is so often the case. He hadn't been fasting during Ramadan, and that must be frowned upon for Muslims, before the sun goes down, and it's Ramadan and all that stuff. So Mercurio advised that he was restless, frustrated, and tired, like so many Democrats. And he said, I don't know how much longer I can take being here. The siege of ignorance is strangling me. But he used the Arabic word for ignorance, the jalaliyah, and says the siege of ignorance is strangling him. I don't have the desire to do anything except jihad, he said, a craving for mayhem and terror. But Democrats say that jihad is just inner struggle and not mayhem and terror and not murder. And Mercurio continued that he wants to do something partially for the sake of satiating some kind of bloodlust. Got some kind of bloodlust. Mercurio advised that there was apprehension about conducting an attack in the United States, some apprehension, but then he got over it. He stated he did not want to be reckless in an attack, but also did not want to keep sitting here. He's not going to keep sitting here. And then March 26th of 2024, that's very recently, an FBI online covert employee, they have online covert employees, with whom Mercurio had been previously communicating, plotting terrorist attacks in cahoots with the FBI. I think that's what the defense attorneys will say. Received a direct message from Mercurio on a secret back channel on Al Gore's Amazing Internet. He said, I wanted to tell you something important. I'm going to perform a martyrdom operation very soon by the will of Allah. It will occur in the last few days of Ramadan. The targets will be the various churches in my town. He lives in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And he said, I will provide more details later, working with the FBI confidential guy. I will eventually send you a video. Yeah, sure you will. I will pledge my allegiance in this video to ISIS. He's talking about ISIS. Can you send that video to the Central Media Department when the time comes? That's what he said, communicating with his FBI source. Now, FBI, attaboy FBI arrested Alexander Scott Mercurio, and they have charged him with plotting to murder lots of people by attacking churches in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The Democrat Party, right now, again, this guy, his name is Mercurio, apparently an Italian name, and Alexander Scott, a Bill Cosby name from the TV show I Spy, and now he's under arrest. The people at NBC Fake News have the story as well. Idaho teen arrested and accused of planning to kill churchgoers in the name of ISIS. And he's 18 years old, Alexander Scott Mercurio, arrested in the early hours Saturday, and we found out about it on Monday. A day before, prosecutors say he planned to carry out the attacks on Sunday, you see, in beautiful and wonderful Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because this is what, radical Islam and the Democrat Party does to people and to their young, malleable brains. 18-year-old male in Idaho without a Muslim name, but apparently converted. An Idaho teenager arrested accused of planning to kill churchgoers during services across his hometown in the name of the Islamic State group, authorities have said. Alexander Scott Mercurio, 18, from Coeur d'Alene, was arrested early Saturday as part of an FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force investigation. A day before, prosecutors say he planned to carry out his attack. Now, honestly, great work, FBI. Don't get to say that very often anymore. Great work, FBI. Nice job getting this creepy guy and taking him off the streets, putting him in jail. So thank you very much for that. God bless America. If only that's what the FBI was dedicated to all the time, they'd still enjoy the respect of the overwhelming majority of the American people, which they no longer do. He's accused of attempting to provide material support and resources to ISIS, according to a federal criminal complaint filed in Idaho on Monday. The FBI said he was actively planning to attack churches Sunday in Coeur d'Alene, a town 30 miles south of Spokane, and using weapons including knives, firearms, and fire. The Democrats have been burning police stations and courthouses for years now, since St. George Floyd of fentanyl died of heart failure while resisting arrest again. The attack was timed to coincide with the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. According to a direct message sent to an FBI confidential human source, quoted in a lengthy affidavit attached to the criminal complaint, Mercurio set out his plan in detail. Stop close by the church, equip with weapons, and storm the temple. Kill as many people as possible before they inevitably disperse and scatter. I don't know, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, you may find a lot of people that have firearms in the church. Surprise, surprise. Then burn the temple, meaning the churches, to the ground and flee the scene, Mercurio allegedly wrote. He said he would then repeat this for all 21 churches in the town of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, according to the prosecutors. Mercurio will face up to 20 years in prison. Really? Because, that reminds me that Enrique Tarrio got 22 years in prison for not even being at the Capitol on January 6th. He was in a hotel room in Baltimore, Maryland, and not personally involved, didn't assault anybody, and he got 22 years in prison. For not even being there. And this guy was planning on massacring people at 21 different churches, and he may get face up to 20 years in prison if they successfully try and convict him on all of these charges. Now, that's pretty appalling, because we live in a very corrupt time and a very corrupt country these days, I'm sorry to say. All right, we've got lots of stuff for you. I did want to share that story with you because I know that it's not going to be widely reported by our corrupt news media, which doesn't report the news. They don't cover the news. They cover up the news. That's kind of their bag, baby. Yes, it is. An amazing and funny story in Salon magazine. You may have seen the stories. I talked about the stories here. New York City, there are Democrat men wandering around the city punching women in the face really hard for no apparent reason. And one of the lunatics, and this lunatic has been arrested for punching a woman because he posted multiple videos online talking about punching women in the face in New York City. And in the background behind him when he posted a video, he hanged a Trump flag on the wall behind him. It's a black guy who's, I would say, obviously mentally ill, crazy, typical Democrat voter for the most part. And he posted a video. And when we saw it, and I talked about it, I think I talked about it here, about the flag behind the guy. I said, well, they're going to try to paint this as, oh, no, they got a Trump MAGA guy punching women in New York. When, of course, he just stole a flag and hanged it to cover the rat hole in the wall or whatever the explanation was. But he didn't say anything political. But he did have a Trump flag on the wall behind him that he undoubtedly stole. Now, Salon magazine, which is just another left-wing outlet. Salon magazine has the story, men punching random women in New York City, : they love their colons. A desperate last gasp of the male rage fueling MAGA. Yeah, that's what's going on. It's MAGA. That's what's, these guys, they're, I believe every one they're looking for is a black male in New York City. Typical Trump voter, right? MAGA voter. This reminded me of Juicy Smollett. This MAGA country, right? Downtown Chicago, 3 o'clock in the morning, Arctic blast. MAGA country. And now Salon magazine. Yeah, men going around punching, black men going around punching all white women. It's all black men punching all white women. The news media doesn't cover it because it's not all white men punching all black women. That would be news. See how this works? Black men punching only white women, that's not news. But Salon magazine says that it's MAGA. This is MAGA white rage. You know, just like our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to get in touch with his white rage. I wonder if he's found his white rage. He's retired now. He's had a lot of time. Maybe he found his white rage. Might be behind the refrigerator. A lot of stuff falls back there. Yeah, so there it is. It's white rage, even though it's black men doing it. It's MAGA rage, even though it's Biden voters doing it. This is our news media. They're not truth people. They're really not. Amanda Marcotte wrote the piece in Salon. She has a tenuous grasp on reality. That's why she's a journalist.
I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it.
Yeah, Mark Morgan, who's great, and an important piece in the Washington Examiner about how the FBI has corrupted crime stats in the United States because it serves the interests of the Democrats. And that's a tragic thing to have to say, but it's true nonetheless. Also, Democrats have got a lot of mental issues. I've learned over time, and it's quite sad, really. I think maybe, what are we going to have to do, Mike, with all these mental people? Maybe put them in camps. We're going to have to put all the mental people in camps. Oh, wait a minute. We don't put people in camps. Only FDR. Only Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the Democrat hero with a big memorial on the mall. He's the only one that ever put people in camps, right? The Japanese and Americans who were of Japanese descent thrown into camps, Manzanar and all those, because FDR. But we got a lot of crazy because there's an ABC sitcom star, she's a star, who says that after the 2024 election, when Trump wins, white backlash, she's a black woman and a racist, and she says white backlash against minorities will, quote, have us in camps, that, Trump and flag-waving Americans that serve in the military and work as police officers and raise normal children to not shoot people and to, boys to grow up to be men and girls to grow up to be women. Normal people, remember normal. And if you go to the Chris Plant store on Al Gore's Amazing Internet, you'll see our Remember Normal T-shirts and coffee mugs and things, among other many fine objects. But wait till you hear this woman. It reminded me of Michael Beschloss, the alleged presidential historian, failed former presidential historian, saying that if Republicans won the midterm elections, that they'd put your children in did he say jail or camps? Jail, and then maybe kill them, that Republicans are going to kill your children. Just a couple of spoonfuls of Democrat Party rhetoric coming up next.